Big Sills! Love starting the show off with that. I always do, man. As a matter of fact, I always have. I've done that my whole entire career. Because it is a Friday. It's a football Friday. It's kind of a weird football Friday for Eagle fans, obviously. But not really. It's been an interesting... Doesn't that Monday Night Football game seem like it was 3 months ago? It just happened a couple days ago. All quiet on the Eastern NovaCare front. No comments coming out of NovaCare. Eagle management not making any noise. No endorsements from anybody of significance except for the players. Nothing. Letting it hang out there. By the way, it's funny, I was listening to Tone and Rob talk. Let me just throw this at you before you even go further. You think the Eagle job's a good job? If you're a head coaching candidate, and every head coach since 2000 has had a winning record, and they have fired every one of them, why would I want to take the head coaching job when I'm not a significant piece in what they do, and that you can replace me at any time? I'll tell you something else. If you replace Nick Sirianni after taking a team to the playoffs 3 times, most people don't know what's going on internally in that organization and how they do their business. They're going to look at it from the outside and from 35,000 feet and go, what the fuck is going on there? So no matter what you do, no matter the success you have, you get fired? Shit, the New York Jets haven't had a playoff team in 13 years. They kept their coach. Now, some would say, well, the expectations aren't as high. I get it. But what are we talking here? Your expectations were what? To get to a Super Bowl? Well, those were on lofty expectations. You know the history of the league. You were fighting against history, but yet you didn't want to follow along with history. You thought you were better than history. Hey, guess what? On the way to reality hit Eagle fans in the face. You weren't going to do it. You were not going to get to a Super Bowl. I actually told you weren't going to get to it. I did think you'd get to the NFC title game. But I told you weren't going to the Super Bowl. No chance in hell. I still don't think the Chiefs are going. I don't. I never did. I never thought you were going to a Super Bowl, and I picked you a year ago to go. You were never going. Why did you think you were? Because why? You were 3 points away from winning 12 months ago? What's that got to do with this year? Nothing. Your expectations were way over the top. You set your expectations, and I told you this a couple months ago. And if you remember what I said to you, this will be the biggest disappointment in Philadelphia Eagle history under Jeffrey Lurie because your expectations were so high. You crashed and burned. Now there's going to be a meeting where Nick Sirianni has to basically reapply for his job. And he has to go in there. This is going to be interesting, and this is going to be a great experiment on exactly what to do, what not to do, who has leverage, who doesn't. I mean, that's not an attractive job, the Eagle job. You're in a tough division. You're in an organization that doesn't think highly of coaches. You're also in an organization that the head coach is not allowed to pick his assistants. That's been exposed. No matter what people say. Sometimes when I hear even some shows on our network or listening to other people, there is some sort of notion out there that Nick picks his assistants. That's absolutely asinine. Nick, and by the way, the one thing that we have also exposed is that Nick Sirianni doesn't fight for his assistants. Who would want that job that you can't fight for your assistant coaches? That, in a nutshell, is going to be why Nick keeps his job, because He's not going to fight for Howie's assistants. Why should he? This is a different dynamic than when Doug was fired. Those coaches were many of those coaches were Doug Peterson's coaches. These are not Nick Sirianni's coaches. These were handpicked by management. That may save his job, depending on how he answers the questions and the game plan. And by the way, I've got a dynamic in why and how he's going to keep his job. This has got nothing to do with picking up blitzes. This has got nothing to do with development of Jalen. This has got nothing to do with that. This is a structural, cultural way of doing business. And you have to answer for that. Well, how come they couldn't handle blitzes? Because you hired coaches that couldn't understand how to defend a blitz? Well, who hired him? Howie did. See, I don't think there's just one meeting that the owner's having. I think the owner's having two meetings. One with Howie and why it failed, and one with Nick and why it failed. Because he has to answer too. One thing that owner has shown us, and by the way, John Ritchie, again, another puppet for the Eagles. I think he's one of the truly trend-setting owners in NFL history. He sets the bar, and you've underachieved in 30 years because of your incompetence and how you handle your egomaniac mentality that you have to have control over winning Lombardis. John Ritchie's over his skis. He's not telling you the truth. Jeffrey Lurie has underachieved. The guy in Baltimore is a great owner. The Rooneys are great owners. To some extent, the Mars and the Tishes are great owners. Bob Kraft's a great owner. Those are owners that are looking for Lombardi trophies, not control. Jeffrey Lurie is a really good owner to a point. Jerry Jones, his greatest moments are in his rearview mirror. Isn't that sad? If you're Jerry Jones, your greatest hire was 30 years ago, and you've not been able to duplicate that hire since. You've never been able to duplicate it. I think Howie has to interview also for his job. I mean, this week has been quite entertaining to watch and see how things are said and not said, and how the Eagles do business. They wanted this to hang out there. They wanted to get a pulse of the community, of the national media, on how they perceive Nick Sirianni. And they're going to talk to the guy today, supposedly. I would also say this to you about Sirianni. Don't you have questions for those guys? Why'd you make this side move? What compelled you to do that? I think that's a fair question. If you can't ask a question, or are you not able to ask that question, that's all you need to know about the Eagle job. If you can't fundamentally ask that question and you're Nick Sirianni, that job may not be for you. That is a fundamental question. Why did you think when we were 10-2, you had to make that decision to pull that guy out as defensive coordinator and put someone in who didn't know the personnel, didn't run a scheme, and basically was giving us two different styles of defense all in the same time? Why did you do that? And get this, if that becomes confrontational, that could get him fired for that. Think about that. If he gets fired for asking that question, that's all you need to know about the Eagle job. It's not really a job. And it doesn't really matter who gets it. And it doesn't matter how much success you have. Because if you could take a team to a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl, they're going to fire you. Think about that. No matter what success you have in Philly, if you're the head coach of the Eagles, it doesn't matter. That's what we've learned this week. It doesn't matter. What does that tell you about how they look at the value of that coaching position? They don't. I want you to think about what I'm saying to you. I heard Tony Rob talking about blitzes and shit. Ask yourself this question. How can you win a Super Bowl, take a team to a Super Bowl, and that doesn't matter in the landscape of keeping your job or not? Tells you all you need to know about the gig. It's not a great football job. It's a window dressing job. You're a fall guy. When they hire you, you have a 4-year window to be the head coach of the Eagles, and then they're going to fire you again. Steve goes, it's all about results. No, it's not. Because if you give them the results, they still fire you. Or they think of firing you. Hey, let me ask you this. Do you think the Eagles are going to address, if they keep Nick Sirianni, do you think they answer and do a press conference that Sirianni's back as the head coach? Or do you think they just go on business as usual? How are they going to, are they just going to blow it off? Like the Mike Tomlin story? He was never going to be fired. Oh, really? How do you think they answer this? You think they just blow it off? No. It's being reported that, there's a meeting today. And that he's not going to have his year-end meeting with the press until next week. Okay. Sounds to me like they're just going to blow it off if they keep him. And they're not going to have, well, he's back. That's what pissed Mike Tomlin off. Mike Tomlin's like, I'm not going anywhere. Where'd you get that? Who made that up? The Steelers, get this. You notice the Rooneys never came out and addressed anything of that? That Mike Tomlin, they never addressed it. There's no press conference about Mike Tomlin coming back. There's only a press conference about a contract extension. Look how the Rooneys do business. They weren't going to get out there and say anything. They had no notion of firing that guy. And get this, they don't feel they owe you an explanation on something that you may have reported that they weren't thinking at all. But the difference is that I do think the owner of the Eagles is thinking of firing him. Mike Tomlin was never going to be replaced in Pittsburgh. It was up to Mike Tomlin from day one, what he wanted to do. And the Rooney stayed away from that. The Rooney stayed away from that. It's up to Mike. Whatever Mike wants, we want. They wanted Mike back. Flexing goes, he can't lose his fan base. Let me put something to you this way, Flexing. There's not a chance in hell if you keep Nick Sirianni or if you fire Nick Sirianni that the Philadelphia Eagle fan base is going to all of a sudden start boycotting Eagle football. Stop being like that. That's not happening. What do you think this is? Some sort of political conversation here? Republicans and Democrats and independents love the Eagles. It's the only place in Philly where you have 70,000 fans that go into one building, politics and religion aside, no one cares. It's all about green and white. No one cares. So don't talk dumb like that. Well, you can't lose the fan. Lose the fan base, he'll never lose. The Eagle fan base will never leave that team. They will never leave that team. They'll give that team more shit, but they'll never leave that team. Can I tell you the number one question that will be asked of Nick Sirianni when he's in that meeting with the owner of the Eagles? What do you think the number one question will be asked? I think it's the only question that needs to be asked. There's one question. And now, before you answer it, I don't know who told you that I'm out, and trust I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Sirianni has to go. Okay. Hey, let me ask you this. What will be the one question that the owner will talk and ask Nick? Who are your coordinators? No. Irrelevant. He's not hiring them. Who are your coordinators? Really? Nick Sirianni has no say in who the coordinators are. Nothing. He never has. Remember, it's a window dressing job. About Jalen Hurts? No. Here. The owner of the Eagles is going to sit him down and go, all the assets, all the things we gave you in 2022, and the plan you executed in 2022, with all the players and coordinators we gave you in 22, why were you not able to execute the same plan? Remember what Nick said? We're not changing anything, really. They went into 23 with the same fundamental formula that they had in 22. He said it at the beginning of the season. Did he not? And you know where he got that from? The owner, the GM. Why were you not able to execute the plan we gave you? Because that's what this comes down to. Him taking their plan on how they wanted to do business and how they wanted to do game. That's why they never deviated. Don't you get it? How many weeks did we talk? How come they don't throw screens? How come they can't pick the blitz up? How come they can't do this? How come they can't do this? How come they can't do that? How come they? Because he was executing their plan. And they didn't deviate off the plan. Doesn't it make sense now? And Nick's going to have to navigate through that. This is how I would answer if I'm Nick, if I want that job. Well, and here's something you got to think about. Don't start talking about last year right away, because then guess what you do? You burn your leverage right away. You can't go to success right away, because what do? You dilute it. You've got to address now and then save the great things you've done in the back end of this interview. You can't throw it out there right away, because then they're going to hack at it. I'm telling you how to get through an NFL interview. If he bumbles this like he does those interviews and those press conferences, Nick Sirianni will be fired by next Tuesday. So I'll tell you how he should answer this if he wants the job, and I'll tell you how he will answer it if he wants to lose the job. First thing he's got to say is, hey, man, collectively, we just didn't get it done as coordinators, head coaching, and it starts with me. And I thought we would dig our way out of some issues, and we weren't able to do it. And once again, that's on me. The players, again, lost faith in the plan. I've got to somehow get that back in action to where they're buying into what we're doing and what we're going to do going forward. And the first thing I have to do is make sure that I oversee more and have more say when it comes to when we're in those games, that we're putting ourselves in critical situations to be able to win games and to be a better play caller in situational play calling. We've got to all be better at this. You don't want to throw Howie into it. You don't want to throw the owner into it. You don't want to throw any of the hirings into it. You have to basically take the bullet right out of the gate and say, hey, but I believe that we can move this thing forward, because you know why? I have a history of success here, and I'm the guy for the job. Yes, things fell apart at the end. We did win 11 ball games, and it was a horrible ending. 12 months ago, we were in the Super Bowl. And as great as things went last year, things went horrifically wrong. And working together, I know we can write this, because we have an organization that knows how to do this. You've been doing it for 25 years, Jeff, since you owned a team. And I'm very confident I'm your guy to move forward. Now, if he doesn't want the job, you come out of the gate, and the first thing you say is, and when they ask the question, how come you couldn't execute the plan we had in 22 and 23? Well, it started off from the beginning, and it was wrong. We hired guys, in my opinion, that didn't have enough experience on coaching new faces on defense, and we gave Jalen a coordinator that wasn't quite up to the experience level that he needed to take him to a new level. And I think we overestimated Jalen Hurts, that he would take the growth and still continue to grow, and he didn't. Hey, Josh Allen took a step back a second year. So again, all quarterbacks take steps back, forward. Coordinators change. You know, we calculated wrong on the coordinators. And then I would say also that indecision move that you guys made, it hurt us. And right there, you could be fired. That decision to move Desai out of the sidelines and put Patricia in there ended the season. That theoretically ended the season, mentally and also spiritually in our locker room. It ended the season. Once Desai was put in the box and in the broom closet, and once Sean Desai was put in the Howie Roseman broom closet, the season's over. Get fired. What they did to Nick Desai is the same. What they did to Sean Desai is the same thing they did to Howie Roseman. They put him in the broom closet, and your season was over. You know, people want to point to one moment. There it is. It's not a game. It's that moment there. The locker room was lost. That's the moment. Because get this, you can take losing to Dallas and San Francisco, but the locker room was lost when they put that guy in as a coordinator, because then no one cared. And you lost to Arizona, New York, Seattle. All of them look the same. And the Bucks. It was a self-inflicted wound that ended the season. And now, again, I think the leverage that Nick has is that I don't believe Nick made that call. Nick walks into that meeting knowing full well that they torpedoed their own season. I think if they would have left, do we not agree with this? If they would have left Sean Desai as defensive coordinator, they'd probably beat Tampa. I'm willing to say that. They probably beat Tampa. Tampa's going to get boat raced this weekend. They're going to get boat raced. By the way, the Dallas Cowboys didn't win the NFC East. You gave it to them because you laid down and quit. Think about this. You know how the Cowboys won the NFC East? The Eagle players quit. And the coaches quit. The whole organization took a massive torpedo and went down like the Arizona. Seriously, that thing was like Pearl Harbor. There was no surviving. Now, you know how you turn this around? You fire everybody. All those players on defense, get them out. And you know the problem that you have. You know, I heard people saying this. Hey, so I saw a lot of guys playing for themselves. Well, that's what you get when you hire a lot of mercenaries and you don't have a core group of people. Dude, when you have, let's take a look at this. How many free agents or trades do you have of people on your team of your 22? Swift is not yours. A.J. Brown is not yours. Let's see. Hassan Reddick is not yours. All three of your linebackers are not yours. Your two corners are not yours. Your safety's not yours. I mean, half your 22 are people you didn't develop. Half your team are people that you didn't draft. When you're a mercenary, you're caring about your job, increasing your value and your stats and your numbers. I don't give a shit about the guy next to me. When you're drafted together and there's a reason the best part of your team is the older guys, because they are all drafted around the same time. And they were all homegrown, raised, and grown. That's why your leadership counts are people that you drafted and developed. The Brandon Grahams, the Fletcher Coxes, the Lane Johnsons, the Jason Kelce's. These were guys that you drafted. 10-year plus guys. Once those guys go, you don't have any 10-year plus guys on that team. You have nobody. How about this? Let's do this for a second. If Fletcher Cox leaves, Lane Johnson leaves, Brandon Graham leaves, if those guys, say Lane does, if all those guys leave, who are your leaders left behind? Jalen Hurts? I don't know. I'll tell you what, I question that kid's leadership right now. Who else? Devontae? Okay. Who else? Who's your leader? If all those guys retired today, who's your leader on that Eagle team? Jalen? Let me do this. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's been 5 days. Jalen Hurts has yet to say anything about Nick Sirianni directly. What does that tell you? Or doesn't tell you? And you hear people say, well, I wouldn't read anything into that. Well, I would. Don't you understand that comes with the job description? Head coaches are tied to their quarterback, and quarterbacks are tied to their head coaches. You think any shit went down with Andy Reid? You think Mahomes would not say anything for 5 days? You think Lamar wouldn't say anything about John Harbaugh? And by the way, through that whole thing last year, John Harbaugh had Lamar Jackson's back the whole time. I probably went a long way with him. Now he's my man. He's our guy. We're not going anywhere. Only 2 teams called him and kind of had some interest in him. Now he's the MVP. Harbaugh had his back. Those 2 guys are thick as thieves now. Okay, I mean, this organization comes down to the owner and the owner only. Why couldn't you get our game plan across? Then I would look at Howie and have our meeting. Howie, what happened? What went so wrong this year? And if Howie starts barking about coaching, well, you hired him, Howie. the analytics department, all that. You got to be careful there because why? The owner's son is in there. So Howie's got to be careful there. I think Howie's got a lot of landmines around him right now because he also has to have some. Dude, he doesn't get off scot-free with this. I don't think that owner's going to allow that. Look, I don't think Jeffrey Lurie has been a spectacular owner. I think he's been a really good one. But I don't think he's dumb. Fire Nick is what I see with everyone. Fire Nick? For who? Nick Sirianni 2.0? You guys are not getting it. That job is not significant. It's not a significant job. The Philadelphia Eagle head coaching job is not a good job. You know why? It doesn't matter if you have success or not. You could be Andy Reid, Doug Peterson, Nick Sirianni, and they're going to fire you. It doesn't matter. Their history is telling you that. Why are you fighting what they've done? This is not Sileo's opinion. Don't you get it? This is not an opinion. This is who they are. Even that dumbass Chip Kelly had a winning record. Why are you fighting the truth? It doesn't matter who the head coach is unless, like we said a couple days ago, course change, status quo. Well, Latino, I'm sorry I missed your super chat, but when I'm opening up with a monologue, you might want to hold up on it a little bit. If you want to resend it, I'll say something on it now. I'm awake, are you? So again, blitzes. Lurie needs to ask himself, if Nick was on the open market, fired, how many teams would want to hire him as a head coach? The answer is 0. I don't believe that. I think he'd get an opportunity to get a head coaching job. 1, he's white. 2, he's a winner. 3, all he has to do in a job interview going, they fired Andy Reid and Doug Peterson. Isn't that all you need to know? Because then the Eagles become a clown show. You fire Nick Sirianni without kind of cause, you're going to turn your head coaching job into more of a sham. Because then head coaches around the league are going to go like this. That's not a good job. Because no matter what, do you understand? If you fire Nick Sirianni, you diminish the head coaching job. That's not someplace you want to be where coaches don't want the job. Shit, Washington looks almost like a better job right now. When will the news break if Nick is here or not? That's it, Khalid. I don't know if they're going to break any news. They may not say anything publicly. I tell you this, I think the Atlanta Falcon job's a better job than the Philadelphia Eagle job. At least the owner's going to let you do what you want. The owner's going to give you a chance. Arthur Smith had every chance to be successful. Hired his own people. Hey, he failed because he failed. He didn't fail because people above him failed for him. I know Rich McKay. He's been on the program 3 times. He's the president of the organization and been friends of mine for 35 years. I know the president of the football committee and the competition committee. He's been on this program. You've seen him. I know how Arthur Blank does business in Atlanta. Sills, watch the last 2 Eagle games? Why? I could watch the last 4 Eagle games. They're all the same. Nothing looks different. Players quit. Coaching quit. Whole thing. They stopped competing. That's the problem. If someone go like this, that's coaching. Well, then you don't really care about your job that much and how much money you make. Professional football. I'll talk to these guys like they're 12 years old. These football players are accountable. as much as Nick Sirianni is for that meltdown. The coaches don't get the credit for last year, and the players don't. You work together. You're in the boat together. You're rowing in the same direction together. When shit goes south, it's not Nick. And then you let the players off the hook. The players are as accountable for that shitbox show as anybody else, including your quarterback. Your quarterback is awful in public when it comes to directly commenting on others in his team. Needs to work on it. Not very good. Okay? He really doesn't understand who he is right now, I don't think. Or he's got a selfish mentality. That I don't believe. But it's one or the other. 5 days, you say nothing. Even a subtle thing. I love Nick. Being around Nick is great. You know what that endorsement would mean to the owner, to everyone, to others in the locker room? Just something so stupid like that. Never. Not out of him. And if you don't believe in your coach, that's an organization that gave you the opportunity, and that coach gave you also the opportunity. And they put and did great things around you last year, and all of a sudden things go south, and the first sign of trouble, you bail. Tells me a little bit about you too, kid. I'd try to work this out together, or no? Well, I don't believe in Nick. You did last year. Well, no, that was more Steichen. Yeah, well, guess what? I get credit for that too. For executing their plan. I'm not defending Nick here, but if you're trying to put people on an island in this conversation, you're way over your rails. They're all in this together here. Now, people, what they've done is they've taken life preservers and gone over here. Jalen's gone over here. You've got other players over here. You got the Howie Rosemans over here. You've got the owner watching all this. And you know what you do? You watch really how the mice. John Madden said something to me a long time ago. When the boat takes on water, all the rats come to the top. And they start jumping off the boat. The ones that stay are the ones you want to go to sea with. Because right now, the rats are coming to the top. Do you understand that's what your owner's doing? He's allowing the rats to come to the top. He wants to see who's going to start talking more, saying things publicly. It's a brilliant strategy. It's a brilliant strategy. Let's see what happens. Who talks? Who starts pointing fingers? Who handles himself as a professional? Who endorses who? Who acts like a leader? Who doesn't? It's pretty smart. Right now, he's looking at reactions more than words. So Nick will stay. Will we get rid of him when we start 2-6? Or will JL keep him until the end of the season? Good question. Reason to fire Nick Sirianni: incompetent, inexperienced. His success, regular season winning record came from more inexperienced coaches around him, implementing a complement philosophy blueprint, no in-game adjustments. Those coaches last year had no previous experience of being a coordinator in any way whatsoever, except for, I believe, maybe Steichen. None of those guys were coordinators. Shane Steichen was a wide receiver coach in Indianapolis. Then he became the offensive coordinator, I think, when Nick got the job in Indianapolis, and he was elevated to that. So Shane was more, in my opinion, that they were all position coaches at one time, very little experience at being coordinators. So when you say that experience, I don't know. Now, I will say they had more experience in this group that they brought in. And this was one of the first things I questioned when they made the move to hire all these coordinators. Are you really going to go with first-year guys for a team that's a Super Bowl team? And you just gave a guy $50 million. All of you, and I mean all of you, were giving me shit saying that, well, Brian's is, Jalen's boy and all. I go, that has nothing to do with anything. And by the way, Desai has a great reputation. Fangio and Carroll speak highly of him. And for the record, Sean Desai was 10-2 when he got fired. He was 10-2. Had beaten the Miami Dolphins, the Chiefs. Steicher's biggest accomplishment was developing Herbert. Gannon comes from the Zimmer tree. You're right. The previous crew had limited experience as well. Right. They benefited from a shitty schedule that I pointed out last year, shitty quarterbacking, and they dominated with experienced football. By the way, that doesn't diminish the roster that was put together. It was a great roster. One of the best Super Bowl participant rosters I've ever seen. I'll make a point to you. I think that roster, you could put almost on the same page as that team that lost the Super Bowl when Brady was 19-0. That roster was great, but they got beat because of lack of experience in the coaching staff. Sean Desai was done dirty here, and the players didn't respond well to it. The whole Darius Slay surgery kind of even comes more to head now. Sean Desai is demoted. Matt Patricia is elevated. And Darius Slay has an arthroscope and misses that game. Okay, I guess. You could have done the arthroscope in the offseason. I didn't even know that was a problem. I personally don't think Darius Slay wanted to play for Matt Patricia. Personally, I don't think Hassan Reddick wanted to play for Matt Patricia. You had a revolt on what was left on that defense. And if you really want to go into a meeting and you want to be honest with the owner, players didn't want to play for Patricia. It was evident. I don't think it was Nick that they didn't want to play for. I think it was Patricia, and the offensive guys saw that. And I think Nick not defending Desai affected the entire locker room. Most coaches defend their coaches. Look at Wink Martindale. Told Brian Dable to go fuck himself after he started firing his assistants. Tony Dungy fired in Tampa because they wouldn't fire an assistant coach that he wanted, and Clyde Christensen. Most coaches defend them. Nick didn't defend Desai. I really believe that's the problem. This isn't about blitzing and it's about not executing the game plan because of the incompetence in coaching. Because when you do the same thing over, you're incompetent. And you don't have answers, which means you're inexperienced. That goes to the hiring of Howie. Here's the two things that happen. And tell me I'm wrong here. Howie Roseman built this team with poor personnel on defense and poor coordinators. Nick Sirianni, on the other hand, didn't execute the plan that they had in 22, like they said they were not going to change at the beginning of the year, and not defending Desai and going along with Desai being benched and fired and changed in for Patricia. No one wanted to play for Matt Patricia on defense. Isn't that evident? Look at the numbers. And by the way, has anyone defended Matt Patricia? Has anyone defended that move? Did you see Slay had to walk back his comments again about Patricia? Yeah, because Slay knows he's out. That's what this meeting is going to be about. And navigating around all of that. You see, this is more than one thing or that or blitzes and Jalen not seeing open guys or that's all true. But it's the way you're going about how you do a daily job. You need more structural. There's got to be more structure. They lost their structure that they had in 22. There was structure in 22. They lost it. You know why? Because they didn't know how to get out of adversity. They didn't know how, get this, they didn't know how to deal with adversity. That's a coaching thing. It is. And you know how they dealt with adversity? They fired a guy at 10-2. Elevated a guy no one wanted to play for. Your season's over. That's why it all looked the same at the end. I went back and watched those last 4 games. They looked the same to me. You know what that was? Lifeless, not wanting to play, and really being pissed off about everything that went on. This was more about trust. This was about the players lost trust in the organization and in the coaching staff because of all those things I just said. You know, a locker room is a very fickle place. Anything can set it off. A guy kneeling, a guy praying, a guy racistly throwing emails out, a guy getting demoted, a guy being played he shouldn't be played. It's a funny place. And it's a very tense place. It's not a microcosm of society. I'm sitting next to a guy in Dallas by the name of Crawford Kerr, and his young kid's playing with his pencil on his desk in a team meeting. I told the kid, you might not want to do that because there's certain guys in that building that'll go dark on you. Kept doing it, jumped up, beat the fuck out of him right there in front of everybody. I looked at the kid. I told him, certain guys in this room you don't mess with. Certain people you can have fun with, and there's certain people you can't. It's not what you think it is in them locker rooms. High intensity, high energy, a lot of wolves in that building. And if you do something stupid that sets off the chemistry in a locker room, you can end your season. Alshon Jeffrey's in one corner. Carson Wentz over here. All of that derailed that whole 17 team. Get this. The ego of the 2017 team, years after that, the 2 years after that, and the dividing of the locker room, your team was divided after that 17 Super Bowl. And then 3 years later, you won 4 games. Those NFL locker rooms are filled with alpha males, no nonsense to be tolerated. Let me tell you something. There's certain guys I've been in a locker room, and you're sitting next to some of these guys. Some of these guys have no sense of humor. You don't fuck with them. And when you start moving guys around and you start firing guys and you take them out of a routine, you're going to lose people. And especially when you don't have a core group of guys on defense that weren't drafted together and don't know anything, and they're there. Get this. Zach Cunningham, Nicholas Morrow, they weren't playing for the Eagles. They were playing for their NFL lives. And when you're fucking around like that with their lives, miscommunicating, putting a kid who doesn't deserve to be playing in a position like Nakobe Dean, you're fucking with my livelihood. Those guys didn't give a shit about playing at the end. They only cared about their job security. Hassan Reddick being dropped in coverage, You think he cared about playing with the Eagles? Or do you think he cared about what they were doing to him and how he was putting bad film on tape? You guys got to understand the mentality of players that aren't homegrown. You can weather the storm. And if you have an authoritative coach, which you don't. See, when things go, do you know what happened really? You know why you couldn't get out of adversity? Do you know why? Because you don't have a coach that the organization thinks highly of. They couldn't turn to anybody. And when they saw Nick not fight for him, they knew then. But they knew that from day one. That's why they're not mad at Nick. Dude, it's not Nick they didn't want to play for. It's Patricia. They're pissed at Nick because he didn't defend Desai. Telling you. I've been in too many locker rooms. I've seen too much of that shit go on. You know, Bill Walsh used to always do this to his assistants. Just to give you, Bill Walsh, and some of you may not know who he is. Bill Walsh was a guy who was one of the greatest NFL coaches of all time, Hall of Famer with the Niners. They had offensive line coaches like McKintrick and all these guys. And do you know what Randy Cross and all them guys and Kevin Fagan and Ronnie Lott used to say to me all the time? Bill Walsh would get knee deep in those assistant coaches. You motherfucker, you not getting the best out of this guy. He would undress the assistant coaches in practice in front of the players. You know what the players felt like after a while? Man, I better do the right thing because I don't want my coach getting his ass reamed out. Hey, I'm going to play my ass off and the coaches and the players became thick as thieves. And they became one unit, D-line, O-line. Hey, I got to do this for my coach or Bill's going to get, he never ripped the players. He would get ass deep in his assistants. It's a way how to communicate. Bill Walsh would go shit nuts on his assistants. Certain coaches that have autonomy in the building. This is how Jimmy coaches his football team to 3 Super Bowls. 2, and then he gave it off, and homeboy won 1. You know what he would do? Jimmy go around to all the meetings. He'd go around to all the drills. He'd watch the D-line, linebackers. He'd sit there going like this and all that stuff. He wouldn't say shit, never play called anything, took care of timeouts, and I think 2-minute warning going into half and 2 minutes at the end of games. I think he managed all that shit. Other than that, he never did a play call ever in any kind of moment, any game, anything. Never recommended anything. He just listened. Defense, offense. Defense, offense. Both. Defense, offense. He'd get in that Monday meeting, and he would undress the team or the coaches all at one time. You motherfuckers, are you fucking crazy the way you fucking go out there and play like he would go berserk. Tony, what were you? O-line coach, D-line coach, Charles Haley, jumping off sides, all that. He would go berserk. Then Wednesday would come. It was another day. You don't have that in your building. You don't have accountability. So again, blitzes, screens. This is a bigger issue. The owner of the Philadelphia Eagles is sitting back right now, and in my opinion, he's watching everyone and how they're handling themselves. Jalen, silence. Jalen Hurts has shown zero leadership And if someone will say this, he doesn't want to play for Nick. Okay. Well, that's very evident now. Okay. You don't want to play for Nick. Well, who do you want to play for, Jalen? Who's next? How can we make you feel better? You think they're going to do that? Well, yeah, because they paid him $50. Now, I'm going to get to something here in a second that kind of goes into the side of Jalen Hurts in this conversation here, and I'm going to do it. Let's do it right now. How much of the Carson Wentz saga and failure will play into how they're going to handle Hurts? Because personally, in my opinion, what they did to Jalen Hurts this year was Carson Wentz-esque. Like Buddy Ryan did when he punched Kevin Gilbride. Right. Don't talk shit to my assistant coaches. It's not going to happen. How much of that Carson Wentz disaster will Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman take into how they're going to handle Wentz or Hurts going forward? Because to me, I think they did as much harm to Jalen Hurts this year as they did in the success level of him earning. Get this. Last year, he earned that $50 million. This year, he earned a pay cut. Now, that's not happening, but he earned a pay cut. I'm awake. Are you? Oh, boy, not Wentz again. Why? Oh, boy, here we go firing a successful coach again. See, what I'm awake, are you not getting is that you're following the same game plan that you have for 20 years. Follow the same game plan. Oh, boy, Wentz. How about this? Why don't we use the Carson Wentz saga and name him Carson Palmer? Name him Carson Widget. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're as predictable as a front office and ownership as you are on Sundays. Not really? Really? So you think you developed Jalen Hurts this year? You think they did a good job coaching Carson Wentz after they gave him the contract? Really? Really? Oh, it was all Wentz. I know. He sucked. He was this. No, I'm not saying he didn't melt down. But I think they had more to do with that too also. Putting trash cans around him. Shit, the year he threw for 4,000 yards. They didn't have one wide receiver with 1,000 yards. I don't think anybody on that team had 1,000 yards the year he threw for $4,000. They didn't put the talent around him like they put around Hurts. I think the year he threw for $4,000, tell me if I'm wrong, there wasn't a guy on that team with 1,000 yards receiving. How's that possible? You had 2,000-yard receivers the last 2 years, and you have a quarterback who couldn't throw for $4,000 in both years. How's that possible? Wentz never had the talent around him like that. And to some aspect, he never – actually, I'll make this point. I think Jalen had better talent, lesser coaching. Lesser coaching. Wentz didn't have a wide receiver that went over 500 yards that year. And he threw for $4,000? Okay. Here's what I'll say. Hurts has had less talent around him this year in the coaching aspects. And Wentz didn't have the on-field talent. Those are facts. Man, Carson Wentz didn't have a guy catch over 500 yards the year he threw for $4,000. You got two receivers who went for over 1,000 yards, and your quarterback can't go for $4,000. All right. That's a coordinating issue and a player issue and a non-developing issue. And by the way, it's not that Jalen Hurts has to throw for $4,000. Lamar Jackson doesn't. Don't you get it? Lamar Jackson is a force in the league. And what does he throw for? 3,200 a year? Okay. You go 14-3? That's Jalen Hurts' MO. But big play offense. You don't have to be a big play offense, Jeffrey. You think they're talking like that in Baltimore, high explosive plays? Or do you think they're talking about winning games? Here lies the difference between Baltimore and Philly. You ready? One organization wants to win games and championships. The other one wants explosive plays and high volume turnover plays. You got your high volume turnovers. Sills, the problem appears to be culture completely. The Eagles have a culture, interchangeable coordinators and players. Winning covered up the issue. Said it all year. Hey, by the way, even people on my own channel and people around the country are ripping me going, Sills are 10-1. How many times you guys were posting 10-1, 10-1, 10-0, 9-0? And I kept going, it ain't what you think it is. I wasn't wrong. I kept pointing it out to you when you were undefeated, 10-1. And you didn't believe me. You bought into the record instead of buying into the substance. Dude, I saw this from New England. I had people killing me on my own network when I was ripping a 10-1 team, or looking at me sideways. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. All of a sudden now everyone hates Sirianni. Time to get him fired. I was saying the same thing. Week 2, week 3, calling him a cheerleader, saying he's not smart enough to be the coach, saying your coordinators are not experienced enough. I've really been doing this since day one. I told you it cost them the Super Bowl, the ineptitude of coaching. No one wanted to hear it. Now you hear it. And now all of a sudden everyone's got the same opinion. This has nothing to do with Nick Sirianni. This is a culture issue. You think Nick's the problem. Nick is the easy fix. It's a Band-Aid. This is a Band-Aid. Cosmo, great question. Sills, what's your move if you're Jeffrey Lurie? I actually like the way Lurie's handling this. Let's see how these guys act. How Sirianni acts. Does he panic? Who does he get conversation with? I think it's smart that he reached out to Frank. Hey, by the way, I appreciate some of the publications picking up, because many people watch the show, and I appreciate some of you guys picking it up that they have reached out to Frank. And Nick has. It's his number one confidant. It's not really a stretch. And by the way, I don't really think that that was breaking news. Do you? That he said that that is his number one confidant. I mean, did you really think that that was breaking news? Again, I'm not a reporter and I don't pretend to be. But I don't think that anyone thought that that was breaking news. Okay? Right? And it looks like potentially Frank, they're best friends. It's the guy he leans on. Okay? Thank you, Jose. Danny, why does Frank keep getting fired? Simple. Indianapolis, you have an owner that OD'd in December. And in Carolina, you have a owner who wanted to hire and draft Bryce Young, and he wanted CJ Stroud. I don't know. You tell me. Is it that hard to dissect? I mean, you're working in shitty environments. But he took the money as any American would. So would I. And the opportunity. There's only 32 of these jobs in the world. You're not taking. No, that's okay. I don't want the head coaching job. That's okay. You're crazy. Nobody turns down NFL head coaching jobs unless you have multiple offers or you're Bill Belichick or you're Jim Harbaugh, somebody with massive leverage. You don't turn those jobs down if you're Nick Sirianni or Frank Reich. Who do you think those guys are? You think Kevin Stefanski's turning jobs down? Sean McVay? Maybe, because McVay now has equity. Joe goes like this: addiction is real, Sills. I feel for Irsay. I don't. I don't feel for him because they'll suspend a player on the Colts for some sort of bullshit when it came to a substance he was taking to get himself better. But the owner can be OD'd up and have prescription pads in his car and $35,000, and the league does nothing to him. Sorry. I give him no latitude. Addiction? Dude, go see a doctor. I don't feel sorry for anybody. And personally, addiction, I'll say one more thing about when that's a weakness. You got to work on it yourself. No one's going to help you. When you struggle with some sort of affliction, like depression or something, I've got to deal with that. Not you. Me. I like how, and what does the owner do next? Do you bring him back? Do you not? I think if you fire him, I personally think if you fire him, you hurt the credibility of the Philadelphia Eagle job. Okay? All right. I'm going to take a time out here. We're going to go forward here. Don't forget, my friend Tone is going to join us at 3:30. It's a great weekend. Divisional round is usually the best weekend in the National Football League, and it's the best weekend in football. We'll talk a little more of that. Some great matchups. What's next on both sides of the football? We'll take a look at that for the Eagles. What's Nick's leverage? And we'll talk to our friend Tone, like I said. That'll be at the bottom of the hour. Our friends from the Newark, Delaware store, Hooters, is going to join us for a couple minutes at 4:30. Philly Godfather will join us at 5:30. Hit the like button. Don't forget. By the way, speaking of Hooters, don't forget the 24 calendars are out. And 9 of the girls are featured inside the calendars. You're going to love it. I think one of the girls that's in the calendar is going to be on the show here today as well. Go to HootersToGo.com if you want to get the great food. You can order it, take it back to your house. Hey, in-game this weekend on Saturday and Sunday for the divisional rounds, $2 off every pitcher in-game. $1 goes to local charities. NortheastHooters.com. That's NortheastHooters.com. Don't forget the great happy hours Monday through Friday, 4 to 6, $6, 6 items. Lunch specials Monday through Friday, 11:30 to 3. Boneless wings. Kids eat for free on Saturday. NortheastHooters.com. That's NortheastHooters.com. And when you do me a favor, tell them Big Sil sent you.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.